La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah.
Like the youth gets angry very fast, and the parents, they don't know how to control their anger. So with the light of Quran and Sunnah, what should a parent do when a youngster like 13 or 14 is getting angry often, although we are supporting in every aspect of life to him?
Thank you for that question. I think as a first step, and I'll just say a few comments and pass it over to Ustadh Amjad, who has a lot of practical experience with counseling issues and dealing with people. Just by way of principle, though, I think that one of the most important things is that the very first thing that our youth in general, but especially our children, need to see from us, which is probably what you're already doing, is that a deep understanding and that mercy that towards the situation that they're in. We don't know why oftentimes that some of the youth have this uncontrollable anger. They might not reveal it to us. It's very likely that something happened to them that they're not sharing. Maybe it was something like they're being bullied at school or they're being made fun of. Maybe it's something like they don't feel like they can live up to the expectations of their parents or society. I don't know. There could be a lot of things that are going on. Maybe that they are constantly being taunted at school. There could be a number of reasons. Maybe they're unhappy with something that relates to their own self. Maybe they're confused about something about their deen, and this is the way that they like to vent. So I think that we might not know what the causes are, but I do think that there is a book that Shaykh Faraz gifted me called The Age of Anger. And one of the things is that we live in a time where perhaps there is a disproportionate amount of anger that based upon a number of circumstances that are prevalent in our specific time. And that when we understand what anger is and how it is triggered within the human being, this requires a little bit more detail. Is that these are workshops that we have to put on to really understand from an Islamic perspective what is anger, what are the various degrees of anger, what are the various things that trigger anger, and how do we go about curing anger. And that the cure is always going to combine both knowledge and that practice, things that we actually have to do. But I think that the very first thing that we can do, without getting even into those details, is to show a lot of love and understanding as a foundation. And it doesn't mean as one-off, oh, I did that. No. Is that we have to do that, and we have to do that again, and we have to do that again. And that my experience is with young people, which I might not have as much experience as other people, is when you do that, is that you will build bridges between you and that particular person. And that once those bridges are built and the trust is there, it might be that they slowly start to open up. But if they feel that if they would open up to you, that you would just flip out and then completely lash out after that, that they might not ever open up again to you. And there's a lot of things that people keep in, and unfortunately if they don't talk to people about them, they don't get solutions to the issues that they're going through. So those are just some initial thoughts, and then each case is a case-by-case scenario. And ultimately what you'd have to do is to find out what is the root cause of that, and then develop a way to treat it.
Bismillah. I think one of the things that many teenagers go through, especially maybe as the children of immigrants, is a communication gap. Is that I think, there's a generational gap, that's one thing, but I think there's also a certain degree of kind of familiarity that can also be challenging. I know I felt challenged kind of in my teenage years communicating with my parents, not because of anything that they did, wrong, and sometimes we might blame ourselves, what are we doing wrong? Alhamdulillah, they were wonderful, but I think it was just one of those things, teen angst or whatever. But directing that into something else perhaps, and having someone who maybe is a good role model but is more relatable, that can be a mentor for your son, whether that's kind of like having a coach in sports or getting involved in martial arts or whatever it may be, some sort of hobby where that can be an avenue to opening up where he might be more comfortable communicating with someone else. And as Shaykh Yahya was saying, maybe there is something that's bothering him, but I know a lot of young people are very, very shy to bring up those things with their own parents for a number of different reasons. But I think the most important thing is that they're able to talk to someone, they're able to kind of direct that energy in a positive way. So maybe finding someone that they relate to that can be a role model and a mentor for them. And once again, the Shaykh Yahya said there might be many, many reasons. I'm not quite certain, but that's what comes to mind.
If you have any questions, just raise your hand and we'll bring the mic to you, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. You said you should try to keep the company of righteous people and learn from them. So how would you go advise someone to begin to do this, and where would you find these righteous people that you're talking about, and how would you start spending time with them? Jazakallah.
Bismillah. The very first thing that you start by is making the intention to do so. And Imam Junaid used to teach, whoever makes a righteous intention, it's a means for that person to have 70 doors of tawfiq opened up for them. And tawfiq is enabling grace, Allah actually blessing you to actualize that thing that you intended in a very real way. Is it making a strong intention that I want to make that a reality in my life, or I am that spending time with righteous people? The other thing that I will say is, you would be surprised how many righteous people are in a local community, but we haven't grown up with a perspective that teaches us to appreciate, let alone identify who the righteous people are. In traditional societies, this was very common, still to this day, that many of the places that you all come from, the places that I've been in the Muslim world, if you ask anyone where are the righteous, it's very easy for them to point to some people that are known. Maybe some of the ones that are more hidden they couldn't find, but people had a sense, and still do to a certain degree, of who the righteous are. And so that you would be amazed at how many righteous people are in the local community even. And who are the righteous people? They're the people who believe and have taqwa. The people who believe and have taqwa. And that anyone that you see as being a person of taqwa, and all of the meanings of that, is that they are adhering to the sharia of our Prophet ﷺ, is that they are people of good character. And that there are certain things that they do, like they are going to the masjid regularly, they are preserving their wudu. These are all outward signs that these are special people. Is that if you start to acquaint yourself with these types of people, even though that there might be an age gap, and you start to speak about them, and you start to ask and inquire about other people that they know, then they might say, well, actually there's an older man who doesn't really come to the masjid anymore that I know, and he was from a righteous family. And so little by little, you will start to know, even locally, where the righteous people are. And nor does it negate us spending our time wisely instead of that going on vacation, is that making our vacation a trip to the Muslim world and visiting traditional centers of the Muslim world where that the righteous are more easily accessible. So it doesn't negate that either. And then in the event that you can't do either one of those things, is that you approximate and do the very best you can. And to be around the best people possible given your circumstances that are going to be a good influence on you and be a means for you to to have the doors of goodness opened up for you. Would you like to add something? You can sit now.
I was trying just to answer a response to living in an age of anger. It's basically to become people of initiatives. And specifically, you talked about 2 points, and you mainly focused on the first one, it was to help people in salvation. So, for somebody like me who pretty much barely understands the basics of his religion and just barely practice it, and has no formal training, how can I help people obtain salvation?
Thank you for your question. It's nice when people are listening and taking this seriously. So we've been approaching this topic from a number of different angles. And throughout the weekend, it's been the same topic. And so we've been trying to chip away at different aspects of the overarching topic. And indeed, it is about this age of anger and finding that clarity, that calm and community in that. And because this is really what we want. We need clarity. And in and of our own selves is that we need to not only have that clarity, but we need to have a presence that is calm. And then in the element of community, we need to work together with a common purpose that in light of everything that is happening. So these 3 components are essential that in any time, but especially in a time where that there is an overwhelming amount of anger that is uncontrollable, that leads many people, that in our context of the deen, to do things that really harming not only themselves, but the community and beyond, people looking on. And so this is a very, very serious thing. Tonight's comments were, or this afternoon's comments were, to really point to the fact that the most important thing that we need to consider in any time, but especially in an age of anger like the one in which we live, we have so many things happening, is that one, how to view everything that is happening in the world from our theological perspective, but most importantly, how do we respond? How can we learn to channel the anger which we should have? We should have righteous indignation for these various things that are happening in the world that are wrong. We have to have anger. But the key is that how to channel that anger. And how do we channel that anger into doing something productive, which is really going to bring about a solution to the problem and not make the problem worse. That is really what is at hand here. And so we are trying to highlight some of the first verses in Surah Al-Mudaththir about various things that we can do, and that taking initiative is one of them, living a life of concern that goes along with taking that initiative, and that figuring out what are our God-given abilities, and then channeling those to the service of humanity. And we made that distinction between the worldly needs of humanity and then salvation, and that we related that to manifestations of the 2 names of Allah that relate to mercy, Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. And both are important. Their background and their religion and so forth and so on. And that relates to the basic needs of life. And then in the process as well, for those that the door opens up for us to clarify the meanings of our religion too, is that we do that to help them that attain salvation and come to understanding the truth of Islam. But what you said about that you're trying to just do the basics, you would be really surprised. There was a time in my life where I was not Muslim. And even a Muslim who only knows the basics of his deen and is only implementing those basics, you would be surprised the impact that you could have upon people. Especially people that don't have anything. That people are totally disillusioned with religion. You would be surprised the impact that you could have upon an individual. It doesn't require that everyone become scholars, although we should try to learn as much as we can. But every single person has a role. And sometimes you can reach certain people that I might not be able to reach. The next person can reach other people that neither one of us might be able to reach. And the key is to find that which is needed to unlock the heart of the person before them. And at one level, it is very easy. We have to simply just be Muslim and implement the teachings of our Prophet. And those teachings will speak with new eloquence for themselves without us having even to articulate anything. Character is also really important. Is that they used to say is that if you can't be a scholar, then at least be a worshipper. That if you can't be a worshipper, then at least have good character. Everyone can have good character and adab. And that in of itself is one of the most important things in terms of influencing and affecting people. So I wouldn't downplay what it is that even that a simple Muslim, and honestly I consider myself a simple Muslim, I know very little, and that even with the very little that we do know about our deen, is that you can have a massive impact by the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by having character, by having these internal qualities that we all have access to.
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله